Hello everyone, this is Ms Chanelle, Language Success Coach, and I'm just making sure that this is because I am on, yeah, okay, gorgeous. So definitely live. So hi everyone, um, we are going to start right now and we are going to look at module 3. So for all the Cape Com students, my prayers are with you guys. I'm not saying that to be negative or pessimistic, but my prayers are with you all because I know how challenging this particular exam is. If you've never met me before, I'm Ms Chanelle. I call myself a language success coach because I am all about helping students with language-based subjects, and communication studies is a really weird subject. I don't need to explain that to you, right? Good. So what I'm going to do here is give you information specifically for module 3. Now, I know across the Caribbean, everyone uses different textbooks. The textbook that I prefer with a huge bias is the Collins Cape Communications textbook. Yeah, it's Collins, the Collins one, the one Collins published, okay? And one of the reasons I love that textbook is because it lays out all the information for each module in a very linear fashion. Now, despite how linear that particular um, textbook is, and it's especially great for content, it doesn't help you totally understand that some of the information in the topics, they kind of, in each module, they actually kind of extend into other modules. So what do I mean by that? I mean that in cases of this module that we're going to discuss, module 3, I think module 3 is the biggest um, culprit of this. With module 3, you're focusing on communication. So I actually call module 3 the communication module. I don't even call the modules by their actual names. But when we look at module 3, it is the communications module. And for that particular module, you're focusing on this huge concept of communication as a science, all right? So that's like the big picture. It's the largest picture. So even when you do module 2 and we're doing Creole versus standard English, you're still looking at communication because language is a subset of communication, right? And then when you go into module 1, you're still technically looking at communication because we're doing specifically written communication and your comprehension of said communication. So even with all of that, there are certain things that come in really essentially in terms of paper 2, because you should know by now paper 2 is where you get most of your points. Can I say points? That's the highest weighted paper for this exam, right? So I have a few sections, again based on teaching communication studies for the last, oh my goodness, is it 3 or 4 years? It's about 3 or 4 years. It's been 3 or 4 years of trauma. You probably will understand why I'm saying trauma. Do you feel the trauma? You feel the trauma? Yes, I feel the trauma for you. And I'm going to feel it again next year, right? You guys are going to escape this year, hopefully. I want you to escape the trauma this year, unless you plan to further it, and that's a conversation by itself, right? So here are the essentials that you need to know from module 3 that are going to help you in paper 2, not just for module 3, but for module 2 and for a little bit of module 1. All right, so without further ado, let's start. So first thing you need to understand is the actual communication process. You need to understand how it works, because it's a very simple process. It's got a few elements, but in terms of its actual process, it covers every single communication context. Every encounter is covered by communication. So for example, I have an example that I use for my online course, which is still in production, guys. But the example is of Tom and Linda. And Tom and Linda are best friends, and they're on a WhatsApp video call to complete homework, and then he suddenly confesses mid-call. And Linda hangs up, right? So what you have there is sender, you've got receiver, right? Those are the basic things. Sender, Tom saying, I love you, Linda. Linda as the receiver, decoding that information. And then we also have the channel it's gone through, which is medium channel will be WhatsApp video call. Day. How did he codify his message? He decided to say it. So it's an oral communication. And the last two factors that really add everything, and they're my favorite two factors in communication process, it will be feedback. Linda disconnecting the call, but the overall arcing factor, which is superbly key and is queen in these situations, is context. Friends of 5 years, best friends, and suddenly Tom decided, you know what, let's switch it up, right? So if you understand the communication process, you will be able to understand a lot of things, right? So when you get that campaign for your module 3 question, you have to understand how that campaign fits into a communication process. And you have to be very, very careful, because you know some of these questions are really ridiculous. Sometimes they bring very complicated processes for you to untangle and try. And I'm saying untangle because you have to exactly know who is the sender, who is the receiver. That's why it's always important to identify your audience in those particular examples. All right. So that helps with module 3 and decoding and deconstructing the situation that they give you. It also helps you in module 2, because when you look at the byplay between the characters, because module 2, you're always going to get a conversation without fail. You're going to get some sort of interaction. Because of that, you may need to figure out, okay, are they friends? Are they enemies? Is somebody asking for help? Is somebody what helps you figure out all those things is primarily context, which is from the communication process. And again, to some degree, it does help with module 1. It helps you, although I could say it's probably a bit more comprehension for module 1, but sometimes I would say it would help in module 1 depending on the situation that is presented. All right. So we have communication process. The second thing, and guys, by the way, this is actually the same information that I have in my course, which is film production. So this is something that I would teach my learners for comms, right? This is not random stuff I'm saying here. This is actually what I would focus and teach on. I would teach this in this exact order with my learners. Next, we have types of communication. You need to be able to discern types. Now, the word types kind of, I think, could be misleading here, but this is the terminology I'm using, right? But types would be like categories of communication in terms of their scope. Am I communicating with one person, a few people, or an entire population of people? And you have to know and understand this, because if you're communicating with just your friend or your neighbor next door, you could probably WhatsApp a message. You could probably go across by the wall, say neighbor, neighbor, or you go knock on your front door, something like that. But if you need to communicate with your entire school because there's a campaign, there's a bazaar, and your entire school is invited and you want people to come out, that's a different type of communication. You're probably not going to go class to class and be like, hey, can you come to the bazaar? Hey, can you come to the bazaar? Hey, can you come to the bazaar? So understanding the scope, it also gives you an idea of how much you can do, right? If you've got a campaign at a national level, then you can use a celebrity endorser. That should be easier, especially if it's something that's being funded by a government or ministry. If you see ministry, then it's funded by the government. So for something like that, yeah, celebrity endorser to host your birthday party. I mean, yeah, if you got the funds, then hire a celebrity, right? But when you use context, you're able to discern how that works. But types of communication helps you as well to kind of break down what's possible. Yeah. Then we go to, well, I've kind of expanded on context. So context is really important, and there's situational and social context. Situational is setting, date, time, more of those things. Social is the relationship. So communication between a teacher and a student, right? Let me add a little more context. Communication between a delinquent student and a hardworking teacher. Communication between um, members of a form class and the the teacher whom everybody loves, right? Because that teacher can have a conversation with you and doesn't scold you and chide you and stuff like that. So you get different dimensions and different possibilities when you start to pay attention to the entire communication process. Yeah. Next, what I love to do is go into verbal and non-verbal, and this is what you need to know. Why do you need to know verbal and non-verbal? Because communication is not just words, right? This is why language is a subset of communication. Um, Everything that you do in module 2 only falls under verbal communication, right? Because verbal communication can be oral and written. So even when we speak in our creoles, we are still using verbal communication. But on the other hand, we have non-verbal communication, which is absolutely fascinating. I love nonverbal communication, and it's something we do every day. So you will see that I'm using my pen. What would you call this one? I forgot what you call this one. But I have my pen. Why do I have my pen? I don't know why I have my pen, but maybe when you see me flicking the pen, you might think, ah, she's got a lot of nervous energy. I probably really do have nervous energy. I'm a kinesthetic learner. All right. So she's got a lot of nervous energy. Maybe she's excited. Maybe she's scared. Maybe she's worried about it. Something. Because you see me with this body language. Now I'm speaking normally, but depending on how you interpret it, you will interpret this, that, however, right? And that's what nonverbal does, right? I'm only touching my nose, right? What does that mean? Maybe I have a cold, right? Maybe I want to sneeze and I don't want to sneeze on the light, right? So many things. But you always know this because you use context, because context is queen. Yes. So non-verbals are very important. Now, do you get non-verbals in module 3? Not really. Module 3 questions for paper 2, I haven't really seen them. However, they love to bring non-verbals in module 2. And I'm take that with a grain of salt, okay? Because honestly, the types of questions that have been coming are evolving in a weird way that I don't like for Cape Comms. I can't track it. It doesn't make sense to me. All right. And I normally track how questions are asked across all the subjects that I teach, but for Cape Comms, it's a crazy situation. All right. But non-verbals tend to come for module 2. So there's I can't remember what year this is. The one where the boy has the gun and he shows off his kill, his hunt. Okay, his hunt where he has the 3 birds and he positions them out. He actually uses proxemics to space out the hunt, and he uses proxemics because he spaces a particular way. Right? He didn't say, "Hey, look, I got this cool stuff." He didn't say that. He didn't say anything. But the way that he laid out, right, his hunt, the way he laid it out, the way he presented it, it strongly suggested that he um it strongly suggested that he had this particular desire to show the larger birds that he had brought back versus the small bird that he had brought back, right? So nonverbals are really important. You see it all the time in daily life. You see it in your classroom setting, you see it in your social interaction, and they're really important. Sometimes when you look at a list of nonverbals, they look very long and they look very threatening in comparison to the verbals. But you should still learn the non-verbals because it does come in paper 1 sometimes, somehow it comes in paper 1, but in terms of module 2 you can at least pick out non-verbal elements. Communicative behavior, guys, you all know what this is. You all are doing the IA, right? And I would still say learn the functions of non-verbal, right? This one was what? Substituting, reinforcing. I think this one was reinforcing. This one was either reinforcing or impression management, one of the two. But learning the functions is also helpful because it helps improve your ability to analyze a communicative context. That's essentially what it does. And you want to get better at analyzing these things again for both module 3, where you have to come up with a communication plan, and for module 2, where you need to observe it and then really focus on linguistic factors. All right. So, and before I move on, even with module 3, where they separate it into written and oral communication, I recommend you understand the advantages and disadvantages of each. Bearing in mind, because sometimes when you see this information, it's like Disney Collins. They write about written as if written was only in text in books, right? And this is a form of written, and that's one form. But written is also what you do on social media. You're actually using written communication, including emoji, I believe, is the equivalent for nonverbal on social media. So you still use written there. The only difference is that the exam is, I think, still evolving on in terms of how they approach technology and communication, because technology has affected communication so much. I can sit down where I'm in the Caribbean, right? I'm in Trinidad and Tobago. I can sit down here. I can send emails to Russia if I have a friend in Russia, right? I can watch videos from you on YouTube from people who are in China, people who are in Japan, people who are in Argentina. I can do that. You can do that because of how all the advances in ICTs have impacted us. So if like what was interesting? Oh, my new favorite thing is WhatsApp, our WhatsApp channels. So especially the celebrities. So I normally add Latin American celebrities. So Maluma, Shakira. So all of Shakira released her album. I saw all the updates on her channel. Right? I saw all the updates and made me feel like, oh my god, and then I can react. And if you've ever been in the official Netflix WhatsApp channel, utter craziness. An absolute gorgeous example of communication, especially in a channel where you can't really reply verbally. You can only reply non-verbally with emojis, and the communication between the Netflix admin and her quote-unquote cubbies, if you don't know what that is, just check out the channel, is absolutely gorgeous, right? So it's worthy of knowing, and it's worthy when you start learning these things. Look at situations in your actual world. If you do not look at communication as a real world event, it's going to be confusing, right? And actually, when I teach my learners, I start with module 3. I know every single school and every single territory does its own thing for this subject, which is absolutely loca. It's absolutely crazy. But I like to start with module 3 because this is the basics. This is the source. This is the science everything is built on. All right. And I will, yes. Okay, good. So absolutely love module 3. Module 3 is quite fascinating, right? The question, however, that comes to paper 2 is not. And that's why I'm kind of here to help you get used to analyzing situations so that when you get the question, you know what to focus on. So all that we've talked about so far in terms of communication process, in terms of context being queen, in terms of the types of categories of communication, and in terms of verbal and non-verbal, this is just like basic info for you to analyze stuff. Are you going to use it to produce a plan? Yeah, you can use it, but it's to help you analyze the situation primarily. Now, you have to get into the channel of communication, right? Now, I just want to say something before we dive into this, because you have to learn channels of communication, right? I encountered a few years ago some arguments about, I won't make this too long, but in terms of dilemma and critique about whether you use the word medium or whether you use the word channel, they are interchangeable. Secondly, you do not need to break down this step into which internet service provider or what equipment or what device you're on. You really don't need to do that. That is, as I would say, above the pay grade for this exam. They just want to know what are you using to send the information, whether it's audio, visual, or sorry, whether it's audio or visual or audio visual. That's what they want to know. That's what ultimately what they want to know, right? But channels are what you're really going to spend a lot of time on as well for that paper. And if you don't understand the information we just discussed, it's going to be harder for you to pick a channel. If it is, so let me go back to my Linda and my Tom, where Tom suddenly confessed to Linda, who in her head, that's her best friend of the last 5 years, and she doesn't know what is he talking about all of a sudden, right? How does he reinforce the sincerity of his devotion? Does he then take out an ad in the newspapers? And you're like, no. Why wouldn't he take out an ad in the newspapers? One, he may not have the money, because newspaper ads are expensive. If you did not know, newspaper ads, billboards, TV ads, to a certain degree, even social media ads, you spend money on these things, right? So they could be expensive. TV, newspaper, billboards, they are the higher end of the expensive ad scale, right? So he may not do that as a school student, right? Unless he's very wealthy. Then he can be that grand, okay? What would he hijack? This is so ridiculous. Sounds like a movie. Would he hijack the morning assembly and let her know? Probably not, because she already hung up on him, right? Maybe he might write a letter, a lot more sincere. Maybe he might send her more messages on WhatsApp, because it's still a private conversation. It's not a public conversation. So when you think of channels, you have to think of, again, like the categories, but you also have to think about how applicable and real world it is, how appropriate it is, all right? Because you want to make sure that this communication really, really happens, right? Right. So when it comes to channels, I also want you to be able to look at them in terms of digital and non-digital media, right? Last couple of years, the exam has been sort of categorizing them as digital and non-digital, right? So I have seen questions where they ask you to bring digital, give only digital, right? And if you're giving digital, you can't just say the internet. What's the internet, guys? What is the internet? What does the internet mean? This is the internet. WhatsApp is the internet, technically. What do you mean? That also, you can't just say social media. What do you mean by social media? Do you know how many social media platforms exist right now? We have social media that exists only in certain regions, right? Because that region has its own social, or that country has its own social media. So what do you mean by social media? So normally when my students, my learners are doing this question, I say, hey, is it a WhatsApp page? Sorry, is it a WhatsApp group that you're dispensing the information, using to dispense the information? Or is it a Facebook page? Is it a TikTok account? Or is it Reels on Instagram? And TikTok and Reels are almost the same thing, so pick one of them. Don't do all in that. But you want to specify. Are you sending emails? Right? Specify what digital media, because like for example, if you have an audience that's older, right, parents generation and up, Facebook is the go-to cliched answer, which is still quite accurate. Dispensing Snapchat, like Snapchat, you might use Snapchat for that audience. No, you wouldn't use Snapchat. Like my daughter is 12, she's asking for Snapchat right now, right? She's asking for Snapchat. So if you were going to dispense serious information to 12-year-olds, I don't know if you'd use Snapchat. I've never used Snapchat, so I'm not familiar with it. But like your age group, TikTok, right? You dispense information on TikTok. So especially if it's like how-to videos, how to take care of a dog, how to take care of a puppy, how to groom a puppy, how to bathe a puppy. TikToks, YouTube Shorts, Instagram and Facebook Reels, absolutely ideal, right? So you have to specify which one. And then you've got the non-digimedia, which again, we're not certain how a question will be asked, right? But this would be all the ones that are essentially offline and in the real world. So that's the billboards, that's the banners, those are the posters, the flyers, the brochures, the celebrity endorsement. And again, you could still mix celebrity endorsement with an online, right? If you get a celebrity to record a video, you could repurpose that. Again, depending on context. Um, Jingles. And then also you have mass media, which would be technically it would be that radio, newspaper, TV kind of triumvirate. All right, so that's mass media generally. So again, depending on the actual context you've been given, the actual situation, you pick one of these and pick the one that is most likely to work. Don't, like for example, if you have to do prepare for a youth rally, there's something very similar that came recently. You're preparing for a youth rally. It's funded by the Ministry of Youth in your country, and you decide to share out flyers across the entire country. I mean, yeah, we could do that, or we can contact every single school and send posters. Posters might work better, or we could have a schedule of activities, and the entire campaign will be around these in-person activities where they do giveaways and prizes, because everybody loves free stuff, right? Yeah, we love free stuff. So when you, and that's the thing, if you ever had a jersey, I don't have a jersey on that right now, like if you're into a particular I don't even have, like if you're in a particular book and you're a fan of that particular book, like let's say it's Percy Jackson, and you do a Percy Jackson, you've got Percy Jackson official merch, that itself is a channel, right? Because it's like, I went to Percy Jackson, or I saw the movie, or I did this thing, and it communicates as well. All right, so these are the key things. There's actually one thing that I left out, and it's actually under communication process, and that's knowing all of the elements that promote communication, all of the factors that promote communication and all of the factors that hinder communication. All right, it's very important to know, can you communicate effectively with someone who's had a seriously traumatic experience and they're crying? Can you tell them, hey, class begins tomorrow at 5 p.m. and we're going till 8 p.m. because we're going to work on the group IAs? No, they had a traumatic experience. They're crying. They probably didn't even hear you, even if they nodded, right? So learning about those can help you envision a lot better and do an even better job of coming up with your responses. Now, I know for some of you, you're going to say this is not how to write the paper. And you're right, it's not how to write the paper, but it is what do I focus on and what kind of impact it has. Like I said, focusing on these key things in Module 3 helps you with the Module 3 question, the Module 2 question, and to a certain degree it helps with Module 1. And you want to be able to go into the exam well prepared and well equipped, because this is an application level exam. This means that you are going to have to figure it out. Literally, that's what it is. You are literally going to have to figure it out, and you are literally going to have to come up with something to show that I know what you're trying to tell me about. I already know about it. I already have my plan. I already have my stuff in order. Yeah? Wonderful. So this was Module 2. I should be doing Module 3. And one of the reasons I'm doing this is because I wasn't certain I could get my course produced and out in time for your exams, right? But if not, I at least still was able to give you this particular information. So you'll get Module 2, you'll get Module 1, and what you can look out for is how to write the essay. I'll try to do all of that in one video because that's really important for you for the exam. All right, so again, this is Ms Chanelle, and I've given you this information with love and success. All right, blessings, and take care of yourself as you prepare for exams. Bye bye, learners.